Willkommen, bienvenue, welcome to Property Quorum. As per usual, we're joined by the usual suspects of Chris Gilson of Root Home, Hamish McClay of Search Convey. Today's special guest is Zara Early-Wilkes from Next to Law, friend of the show. We've seen her on a number of different property podcasts. But today we're talking about a topic which is going to become more and more relevant as we get closer and closer to May next year, I believe, the Renters' Right Act. And not so much it itself, but the countdown to change. And of course, the starters off, Hamish McClay.
We were actually sort of, I think, all expecting things to sort of go through, the Renters' Right Act to be in place. And now we know what the dates and the times are. It is creating something of a difficulty. Now, the full details haven't actually been totally released yet, but it does actually put a lot of pressure on landlords, those intending to stay, because what we've got at the moment, Section 21, which was one of the very common ways of removing sort of tenants from properties when, if you like, the landlord didn't want to go down the full route, but it did very much. It did cover many of the tenants anyway, because if it was rent arrears and things like that, it did mean it didn't get carried forward. But there are all sorts of reasons behind the Section 21, and in reality, it wasn't overly used, although it wasn't entirely satisfactory. There were, as there will always be when the human element is involved, there will always be something. So, but that goes out of the window, and the big challenge with that out of the window is various other aspects which need to be brought, and they all need to go through the court. This is a big challenge with everything, because our courts are overburdened. They aren't capable of sort of coping with what we've got at the moment. They're running totally behind, and with all the conditions not fully written and fully understood by the landlords, they've got a heck of a lot of a learning curve to go through before everything is fully implemented. There's some parts being implemented late December, and other parts will be actually implemented the 1st of May. Now, the challenge is of sort of several fold, really. A lot of landlords are leaving, but any landlords taking on new tenants will need to try and understand the full content of what there is, and this is one of the biggest challenges. And I would guess this is something that Chris is having to look at, in part at least, to actually sort of see the viability of actually taking on some of these properties at this particular moment in time.
Chris, welcome to the show as usual. I believe this is either going to play right into your hands or be a complete frustration. Which do you think it's going to be?
Well, it is in a way, in that the landlords that we speak to, and it's an ever increasing number that seem to be getting in touch with us. It kind of aligns with the volume of disposals that are going on at the moment. So there's already a notable spike in Section 21 notices that are being served, and that's because the landlords will. Even a halfwit could understand that if you say to them, I'm going to restrict you from taking your stuff back later, they'll be like, well, I'll try and take it back now, which is exactly what's happening. I'm not sure why the politicians wouldn't think that would happen. So you're now at a point where you're facing a whole upheaval in the PRS, with people being evicted from their homes under the fear that the landlords or the owners of those properties won't be able to get them back at a later date. And most likely, these landlords have acquired these properties for their retirement, just as I say, an alternative saving pot for their nest eggs. And at some point, they're looking to be able to cash out and get the cash from that property so they can live their lives. They don't necessarily want a tenanted property for however long these next sets of laws are going to be in place. So yeah, we are seeing a big uptick in the volumes of people volumes of landlords that we're having conversations with, and it's exactly for this reason that they're scared of the new legislation that's now been brought in and is about to be enacted in the next 6 or so months, and they've got a very short window to be able to get those tenants out. Now, one of the challenges that one of the reasons for Section 21 being so useful is that Section 8 was so duff and that the court systems were not fit for purpose in terms of being able to get tenants out in a timely fashion. And the previous and I think this current government have all mentioned they're going to overhaul the court system. They were going to do that before they brought in this particular piece of legislation. And I've not seen any evidence that demonstrates how they've overhauled the court system to remove the backlogs, to improve the efficiency of the Section 8 processes, and to really streamline everything that's going through to make sure that owners of properties can obtain possession of their properties under the terms that, even the new terms, that even the old terms that were in the new legislation, the previous legislation. So it's going to be a potential nightmare come May, when even prior, because some of these Section 21s that go through, they'll be challenged, they'll be ignored, and then landlords may have to go down the Section 8 route anyway. Right. So it's going to have an immediate impact on the court system, and if they haven't looked at ways of clearing the previous backlog and streamlining and making the process more efficient, that's going to get compounded over the next 6 months. And then in 6 months, it's going to get compounded even further. So there's a big challenge there, just with that one thing, with not having those set their ducks in a row and fix the problem that they said they would.
Zara, welcome to the show. Zara's in between one place and the next. Thank you very much for jumping on. What's your opinion of the way in which this is going to perhaps shake up the housing market?
It's going to cause chaos, that's for sure. I can't speak from a renter's point of view, but in terms of the conveyancing process, the Renters' Rights Act was supposed to remove the ground rent loophole, which made it easier for landlords to repossess properties if the tenants didn't pay their ground rent. So that loophole is going to be removed, but that still doesn't answer the questions for mortgage lenders, because yes, that was the main argument we could use for mortgage lenders, but will they now factor this into their the finance, when they're looking at your finances, whether or not the lease is affordable? Because now you've got no argument to try and get rid of doubling ground rents and things like that. So you could have leasehold properties that are incredibly blighted with rising ground rents, not to mention rising service charges. And from somebody who rented a long time ago, and I've had clients that have rented out properties and have had issues with tenants that didn't pay. It's basically making it easier for those tenants who don't pay to stay there. Yes, the immediate effect is lots of people will be asked to leave, but then the government's got to realise that it's going to add to their burden to try and find homes for these people.
Wow. Yes, Hamish, it does appear to me that it's going to exacerbate an already existing irritant, which is the massive rise of effectively people who are in between one house and the next. This is not going to help their cause as a government, is it?
Well, certainly not. I mean, unfortunately, excuse me, the build program itself, which the government was hoping to be able to sort of maintain, is woefully low compared to what it should be. So, of course, we are not getting the new properties coming onto the market. And, of course, this is the time of year when it makes it difficult for the building industry anyway, generally. Right. Because there has to be a slowdown in build, because if you take today as an example, it's not particularly one of the best days to go and sort of try and put plaster a property with it in this sort of cold weather without any heating on in a property. Just something as simple as that slows it down. So there aren't going to be any more properties. And from what we can gather, of course, the time that it's taking to sell some of these properties, and Zara, of course, knows how long this can actually sort of be. It's those properties, once those tenants are removed, they are not going to be ready straight away. it's not as though they're going to be available for new tenants, because there isn't the understanding of these conditions. So what we're going to do, we're going to have a lapse. So there's going to be a drop in availability of properties in the short term. And of course, this isn't the best time of year for people to be moving anyway. So they're not particularly looking forward to. I mean, the government were trying to push it through. It's all very well pushing it through, but at least if they push it through in the milder weather, it doesn't create quite such the same sort of level of impact. Because what we have at the moment is, as we know, the seriousness of the time of the year, that those people who don't have any accommodation to live in is bad enough anyway. And to try and put them out in temporary accommodation, the only good thing we can actually say, for the present at least, we are not having waves and waves of people coming in from the continent, paddling in their canoes or whatever they come across the wondrous divide from France in. So yes, the answer is challenges at this particular moment in time, and it doesn't look as though it's going to get any easier by the time we get to the spring. So when we actually look at it, when we model the economy of this country, the economy of the country is good when the housing sector is moving through smoothly, when houses are being sold, when new people are moving in, there's much more money being spent, but it's not going to be happening anytime soon now.
Chris, my good friend Zara has pointed out that the landlords also need to get their EPC ratings up.
Yeah, that's more chaos that's on the horizon. So yeah, that's I think the date for that is 2028, where historic stock has to be remedied and brought up to a level C. So there are all these nails in the coffin for the average landlord, and I can fully sympathise with them and understand why they would want to get out of the market at this particular point. It seems every time the successive governments touch the housing sector, things get worse, and it's a real shame. So yeah, at this point in time, for the average landlord, who may have between one and three properties, they're probably thinking, well, what's in it for me at this point? Why am I still doing this? There's other things that I could go and put my capital into. There's much more passive income streams, dealing with people, tenants, problems, houses. Those are all issues. Those are all big challenges to have to make sure that you can successfully navigate and stay on top of. So it's not like you just address something once and then it's done. It's an ongoing process. So yeah, I can fully understand why some investors might want to go and put their money into Bitcoin or gold or other parts of the market, and have much less of a headache. You're not going to get a bar of gold arguing with you about the location it's been stored in. So yeah, all sorts of challenges. Certainly with the EPC ratings, we've seen this on the horizon for a long time, and we think that actually the next step will the local authorities or the government or whoever else has the next brainwave will leverage your EPC rating and link it to some sort of taxation levy, which we're not really a far cry away from that at this point in time. And given this current government's successive pathways into new ways of extracting capital from the average man, it's not really a far cry to expect them to do something so ridiculous.
Thank you, Zara. It seems to me that it's a voyage to the bottom at the moment, because every time, as Chris has pointed out, successive governments come in and try and affect the property market, all they seem to do is put yet another nail in the coffin of the semi-professional landlord. It's going to just cause the market to disappear. And we end up with, as I've mentioned before, generation rent, where all the properties are owned by large corporations.
And that's another dangerous thing in itself, these large corporations, because it's hard to hold these people to account. And that because they've got the resources to block you and gaslight you, they will do so. Whilst they're trying to address the power imbalance between landlords and tenants, every time they interfere in any way with the housing market, whether it's renting, buying or selling, they just make everything worse.
Good Lord. How did it come to this, Chris?
I honestly don't think there's anything particularly equitable in this act, and Juliet's mentioned it on previous shows, and I think there could be some legal challenges with this in particular as it's taken through the courts and dissected, but it won't be until it's in the Court of Chancery before that happens, which will cost someone quite a pretty penny. And the government will probably try and pull those little excerpts of the act out that have caused it to get to some sort of court situation. But it remains to be seen if the whole thing is fit for purpose or not.
Good Lord. Hamish.
Sorry.
No, Zara, go on.
I was just going to jump in there quickly, going back to the court system and trying to improve things. My husband's a criminal lawyer, and they're looking to, set trials, not in the near future. He's booking trials 2 years down the line. So these people are languishing in prisons. I've got, people that I know that are family lawyers that have said, the government have, tried to digitise family law as well, and all that's causes delays for them as well. So you can just, the thing that everyone's complaining about, delays, the government's going, yes, let's throw tech at it, but it will just end up causing more delays.
And I thought tech was the solution to all problems. Hamish, would you care to take us home, please?
Well, really what Zara said just then is I think one of the biggest challenges we have. The more of these transactions we have, unfortunately, will drag in those that will need to take in solicitors or conveyancers, because if they're going to change hands, unfortunately, it's going to require people who don't have that same level of experience. So the more data we have, the more queries that arise, and the longer the time, it just extends the time. And I think with the numbers of people who are trying to leave, anybody that's buying those properties, and it might be a good time, and Chris probably say, it's perhaps a good time. If you have that money to invest, you've got to look very, very carefully at the conditions. And of course, that's when you've got to look at your solicitors and how much work have they already got on at this particular moment in time, without any of the additional work sort of coming through too. So it's a big blockage again, and we just sort of keep having these blockages. And if you add one blockage to the other blockage, basically the whole thing sort of cements up. So it's not being beneficial to anybody at this moment in time, other than possibly the government trying to save face. It's the aftermath of what they're doing, which is the biggest challenge then.
It does seem to me that the government's responding to who shouted the loudest at any particular time. And once again, we've got to swing from one extreme to the other. It doesn't really favour anyone. I'm sure it really even favours the renters overall, because if there's less stock, where the hell are you going to rent in the first place? Thank you very much, Chris Gilson of Root Home, of course, Zara Olibukas of Nexa Law, and our Lord and Master Hamish McClay of Search Convey. If you find these topics interesting, there's plenty more to come. Please stay tuned with us. We've got on Friday, 1 o'clock, we have Cladding Matters, where we delve still deeper, take a look under the surface of cladding, as it were. And next week, of course, more Property Quorum. But I'd like to thank you all for watching. Please keep your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars, and please try and look after that mental health. Until next week, bye-bye.